All right, good evening, everyone. It's 6:30, and we will call to order the special board meeting of the Palmyra-Eagle Area School District. Can we have a roll call, please?
Justin Thomas?
Yes.
Corey Jones?
Yes.
Michael Eddy?
Yes.
Doris Parsons?
Here.
Jean Reith?
Here.
Mitzi Roszewski?
Here.
Okay, with 6 of us here in attendance, we do have a quorum. This time I read the mission statement of the Palmyra-Eagle School District to ensure that students excel with intellect and virtue, inspired by innovative educators who engage and challenge each individual. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes or corrections to the agenda this evening? Yes.
I have a suggestion for an addition, which would be under board discussion. So letter F, immediate communication needs, we can discuss getting the ball rolling on some of that.
So noted.
I would like to add item G to board discussion, open enrollment.
Okay. Anything else at this time? So for all those with approval of the agenda with the amendments added,
I would move to approve the agenda as amended.
okay? All those in favor of the agenda with the amendments, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So added. Public comment. Let's see, first we, Cammie Klaus.
It was presented to DPI that there was.
Would you, yeah, if you could, wouldn't mind. Thank you.
I just have a couple of questions, just kind of clear some of the questions I think that myself and other citizens might have. It was presented to DPI that there could be a possibility considering the sale of Palmyra-Eagle or Palmyra Elementary. Just wondering if you were to do this, would the proceeds of that sale go directly to debt? Also wondering with the energy efficiency bonds, is that a secured debt, or with any other debt that you have, are there liens on assets or any other secured debt?
Well, this is public comment, not public question and answer.
Oh, so I'm not allowed to ask a question?
Yes, you may. You can ask a question, but that doesn't mean you can answer. Correct.
So are you willing to answer any of the questions?
I don't know that we have that answer right at this time.
Okay.
It's not typical that during public comments that the board interacts, but we'll take notes, and I wrote down what your questions were, and you certainly kind of get answers, but it just, that's not how board meetings that are open board meetings are run back and forth with public comments, so that's not.
I guess my public comment would be then, I think most people would expect that any proceeds of an asset would go toward debt.
well then, we're not allowed to ask questions, I guess it's kind of. All right, so then, also at the DPI meetings, it was presented that if the district did stay open, that the board and everybody would be more than willing to have the sports teams and all the extracurricular activities taken away to put all funding towards education. Is this still something that they're going to stand behind what, you know, your student families wanted in order to put the finances and the kids' education, you know, before football and baseball and stuff like that, and put the money towards summer school and special ed? Okay. If I have to put it in a statement, then I guess I feel like the board and the school should stand behind what your families and students promised they would do if the school stayed open, which was to eliminate all the sports, put the money towards education.
Was that a DPI boundary board hearing that you're?
Yeah, that was right in that room. You had about 100 people yelling at us that sports didn't matter, would totally give up every sport if they could just keep the school district open. I'm sure it's on the DPI's transcript of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say those were all.
Oh, I'm sure it's on there, because you could hear the hollering from all of the supporters. So I guess I would just say that I'd like the board to actually stand behind what their families said they wanted.
Anyone else at this time? Okay. So we'll move on to board discussion, future plans. Item A, be discussion in regards to facilities to remain operational for the next school year, 2020 through 2021. Does anyone want to take it? Sure, yep, it's discussion.
It's my understanding at this time that there's no.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm not technical. I'm good? Okay. It's my understanding at this time being, this is our first board meeting for half of us, that there has been no board decision, action, or direction to do anything at this point. One of the ideas brought forward by the community group, and that did seem to make sense financially, is to consolidate our elementary schools. So at this time, what I'm thinking is that this building remains operational, and one of the two elementary schools would actually be closed, whether or not a building sold or a building is rented out. I don't think that's really been fully vetted. And we would move all of our elementary children to one building, thus the purpose of that being the cost savings. So I don't know, that's not on board action. I would think hopefully the Buildings and Grounds Committee can do more footwork on a lot of the things that have come forth from the public, such as the Palmyra building's a sturdier building and they do have new HVAC. The Eagle buildings, perhaps a larger facility, has a larger piece of property and it would serve our other community in a more, in a fashion. We've looked at transportation, so I think there's a lot more steps that need to be taken before the actual decision is made. But I, as a board member, would like to see discussion on that, information on that, financial things on that as soon as possible, because obviously that's going to consider staffing and class sizes and transportation perhaps. Well, it would have to either way. So perhaps it could be an action item at the next board meeting.
That's what I was going to suggest, is that our Buildings and Grounds Committee bring forth a operational recommendation by the next board meeting, which I believe we will be looking at rescheduling. I think it is imperative at this point that we do consolidate elementaries, that we also move sixth grade to this current building for middle school. I have already been approached and received a map of room assignments possible at one of our elementaries, and I would like it to be explored further. From preliminary work, it looks like transportation would be a wash between which direction we go. So I think that's an assignment for our Buildings and Ground Committee to bring forth by the next meeting. That's genuinely how I feel.
So with that building and grounds, looking at that, I just need to know if it is or is not true that the Eagle property that the school is on is, it's either in a covenant or in the deed that it cannot be used for anything but a school. Is that accurate? Do we know? And who would know that? Public use. Well, I'd like to see what the words are verbatim.
I can't verify that. I would have to find a document that would substantiate that claim or not.
Sure. It certainly would be important to the building and grounds as they made their decision.
Right, I think if we're gonna have the February board meeting in 2 weeks, 2 weeks is gonna be very premature to make that decision without vetting all the possible situations and information. You can't do that in 2 weeks. You can't do that in 2 weeks from today. There's just no possible way for them to. And again, I don't believe, my belief is it's not really about building and grounds. This is about how many kids you can fit into what school, transportation costs. The buildings are already there. Buildings and grounds really don't have much to do with any of this per se. You know, again, if there is some land use agreement, then that would be, again, a part of the conversation. But this is more a dynamic of how many children do we have? How many are going to go in one or the other schools, and or do they all fit in this school? And you just close both of them. And that part is what it is. And again, I think the prior discussions from the board is that it would be very difficult to get them all into this school, into this building in the time frame that we have. Not that it can't be done, but that would be a lot of work to get them all to where they need to be. Specifically from the smaller children in the bathrooms and the bubblers and all those things that seem very simple. That needs to be laid out from a student count, not just here's the building and the properties that we own and operate today.
I do think 2 weeks is a short period of time. However, I think we're on an extremely tight timeline. And I agree also with the fact that it's not just strictly buildings and grounds, but I think buildings and grounds would be able to come through with information such as the deed information from Dr. Bloom, the actual structural soundness of the buildings, because we have those. We have a lot of the reports already that I've seen that community members have gathered about maintenance needs, maintenance costs. We do have the size of both building principals have said that the population of elementary students we had would fit in either building. Carrie Tim has said sixth grade would fit in this building. So we do know some of those things. I agree those aren't buildings and grounds questions. So I think perhaps another committee, maybe HR, curriculum and policy, can be tasked with other things to bring forward too. But I do think there's enough solid things that buildings and grounds can get rolling on, as well as other committees, and we just keep moving forward. In life, I've learned if you have a deadline and you can't get to it, you can ask for an extension. If you put your extension out there first, you wait. I'm a procrastinator. I need deadlines. That's how marketing works. But you have to set a deadline. That's just my opinion. There's 5 others of you.
I agree. I think that we need to get moving on this sooner than later. It's a lot of work, but we need to step up and do the work. I think that our staff is capable of assembling this information, and I think that it's necessary for us to move forward for our students and our families and our staff and our community. I don't think it's fair to them to be hanging in limbo, not knowing what's going on. We are a viable school district. We can function. And we will be here next year. We just need to make it happen.
Yeah, so a lot of these A, B, and C are all somewhat interrelated. You know, you have to have some project plans around probably each of them. And depending on if you chose to, for example, close one school, then what does the org chart look like? If you're closing two schools, what does the org chart look like? You know, so these things are somewhat all interrelated, and just whichever committee is working on which piece may be very dependent on the next committee's information. So, but how about now is really the motto we have to really kind of move forward with. As you've already mentioned, we're on the clock. The state gave us time, and we have to figure out how to be financially responsible and not leave these kids in limbo. We have to have a plan, right? So, all right.
So I guess at this point, then, if we're kind of saying A, B, and C are along the same lines, and, you know, A leads to B and B to C and all intertwined, I guess at this point I would move on to D, with the concept that we're gonna have to figure out, and that could be after the action items of establishing committees, you know, of who's gonna meet when are we gonna meet, how soon, you know, and whatnot. Does that sound right? Okay?
I also think, well, in that, in the mix of A, B, and C, aside from board committees, I think the administrative team would
Yes.
be able to provide their recommendations within the 2-week time as well, so if they could get together and come up with recommendations.
Okay. Okay.
We have the numbers by grade and by location. I mean,
The leadership team stands ready based upon some guidance and direction from the board relative to getting you the information that you're going to need to make some really difficult decisions and choices. So just to verify, once again, the comment that was made, I feel very comfortable telling you that if you were to close one or the other of the elementary, the population of both could be combined in one of those facilities with the assumption that sixth grade is moved to the middle school. Now, that's given current enrollment and not knowing at all what may happen with open enrollment or people choosing to leave for whatever reason.
So then we'll move on to transportation. You wanna-
Just for the board's information, the existing agreement with Lakeland Coach Lines is presently set to expire on August 31st, 2021. The provisions of that agreement indicate that if one or the other parties decides to get out of that agreement, they have to, a year in advance, make a determination to the other party. So you would have to decide by August 31st of 2020 whether or not you wanted to continue beyond that. What the board has done in several years' recent memory is offer one-year extensions on the 2014 to 2019 agreement in exchange for a very moderate, if not modest, increase in the transportation costs. So that's where that agreement got to expire in August of 2021. So you do have a carrier in place for next school year. As far as the particulars of the costs and routing and so forth, that'll be predicated upon your determination in terms of which grade levels are at which facility.
They are obviously well aware of the situation and prepared to reroute, staff ready to reroute, knowing whatever may come.
I suspect that the folks at Lakeland would be more than anxious to have a conversation with the board about what next year might look like.
Okay.
Steve, I have a real quick question. So the transportation piece, did that fall under any particular committee, or was that just a general board thing?
In the past, because there were dollars and cents attached, it typically fell under the finance committee of the board. Some districts that I'm familiar with have separate transportation committees, but typically that's when they run their own fleet.
Okay, all right. Moving on to E, vendor contracts.
So again, to some extent, I think the determination of the board relative to facilities will probably create an opportunity for us to share some information with you for your decision-making and thought process and moving forward. A couple of agreements we have existing are with CISA 2, CISA 1, for example. They provide us with some specialized services to some of our special needs students for services that we don't have on staff. We have a number of arrangements for some therapies through a place called MJ Care. Our school nurse, as an example, is contracted through Fort Healthcare. That agreement expires at the end of June. Many of these agreements would typically run through the school year because they're student-based. And when students are gone for summer recess, obviously there's no services to be rendered. We have a number of contracts for curriculum-related projects, particularly software, login codes, and passwords for both students and staff. Carol and I would like to collaborate and put together a comprehensive list of those, when they're set to expire, what grade levels are involved, those types of things, so that you have that information. As you know, to some extent, because of the uncertainty of the district relative to the dissolution decision, a number of curriculum initiatives were put on hold, so there were no new textbook adoptions, as an example, coming into this school year. So things of that nature, I think, will be rekindled now that the district is going to function and be viable. And again, part of the grade configuration may also assist us in getting you the information you need.
Dr. Bloom, do we have any contracts that are from now to the end of the year that are not essential to the health, safety, and imminent learning of our student population this year?
My response would be we wouldn't have those contracts if it wasn't necessary for all the things you just mentioned.
Okay, thank you. But are there any possibilities of spending from now until the end of the school year that we could eliminate without harm to the children?
Being posed that question this evening, I don't have an answer for that. I would have to think on that. But again, I think I would stand by my original response, which is if we didn't need the services for the safety, well-being of our students and staff, we wouldn't have the agreements in place.
Just trying to save a penny.
What about any out-of-district travel? I'm not saying any of these things that I would vote or anybody else would vote to actually put a halt on, but if there could be non-contractual spending freezes unless they're approved, and that could include conferences, travel out of the district, lawyer, attorney fees, different things that do have somewhat discretion of people spending them at that time, but maybe if we could just look at those further and see if there is a way there could be a cost savings.
administrative costs, things like that.
Seminars, those types of things.
Sure. Okay, we'll move on to the added item, as far as communication and going forward.
Since I threw that one on there, I'll
Where it says speaker with the little microphone there.
Okay. Okay. Who is responsible at this point? I've noticed that when we got a list of district committees, there's no one serving on the district public relations committee. I don't know how long that's been in place, and I know that we no longer, as of I believe last year, have a district public relations specialist. So who has taken on the responsibility of communicating to our students, our families, our community members, changing the marquee in front of the building that says December? Who does that fall under at this point? Because I think we definitely need a communication out to our families that are attending school here yesterday. We need the communication out that says factual information on we are running next year's school year, we are transportation, we are not positive which building is not going to be operational. We don't have to, things we don't know, but people need to know things we do know. And people need to know that this district's here. We've got people who are willing to work really hard and get it going, and something positive that they can then share with other people, because the misinformation and miscommunication is rampant and it's hurting us. Right now, we can't afford negative things to hurt us. We need to go forward with truth and facts. We need to bring in a lot more open table communication, things like the people who came and spoke today, they had legitimate questions. I know they're not handled at a board meeting, but they could certainly be handled at roundtable discussions. And I think that's what we need. We all heard that we've got differing opinions in our communities, in our district, but communications both ways, and good, open, honest communication is vital for like now.
So in the last several years, one of the things that the previous board did, not overly well attended, but coupled with parent-teacher conferences, held listening sessions where 2 members of the board were scheduled to be available. Since elementaries are typically back-to-back evenings, 2 members would go to one of the elementaries, 2 other members to the other, take notes, listen to commentary. At the middle school, high school, typically that was held because they're one evening in the IMC. As Carrie would say, not overly well attended, but if there's specifics and that information is communicated out, people would be aware of date, times, and locations to do that. As far as the communications out, most of that communication has come from the buildings in terms of the secretary and the principal collaborating together for building-specific items. The district manages district-wide Connect 5 messages, which is the district messaging service. We certainly can make use of that to communicate out any number of things relative to the district and any of the issues that were mentioned previously. One of the things that is important to recognize, you don't want to desensitize people by overwhelming them too much, so I'd want to make sure we have very poignant, very specific information that we would want to disseminate. And then we have maintained the district website, current events and so forth. But no one has taken that role since the previous PR specialist left that position. That was at the end of last school year.
I think it's very important, given our current situation, that we do need to have roundtables and listen to our public and see what they have. Some of it we may agree with, some of it we may not agree with, but it's what Doris said is actually true, that there has been a lot of misinformation spread, and we need to listen to what the questions are as we're asked tonight and provide the appropriate answers. I think that this needs to occur soon for some healing in our community. And I know that we're pushing you very fast and we're pushing ourselves very fast. But we need to do this. We need people to know that our school is here and that it is having an impact on lots of people in our community and providing a quality education that should not be overlooked.
So the first opportunity, if you wanted to do a board listening session coupled with parent-teacher conferences, the February 17th, which is on a Monday, 2 board members, if you wanted to agree to gather, we would set aside time, I'm assuming, and space in the IMC would work. It's done well in the past. And then the elementary conferences are later in, let's say it's March. And I can get those dates and times. And again, because they were back to back, one at one building, one at the other building on the opposite nights. And I can put together a Google invite or a Google Calendar if people on the board would like to sign up based upon your availability, and then we can send that communication out.
Thank you. I'd also like to suggest that we send a representative to every village and town board meeting so that we can build bridges with those government entities as well.
Steve, as we pencil in the community meeting that you were just talking about, can we at least have like 1 or 2 topics to talk about and not the entire A to Z to keep it somewhat time constrained? Can we give that to you later as we decide what our priorities might be?
That'd be fine. I think that what's worked best in the past is rather than have an open forum, that there be some very specific bullet points. And I would go so far as to recommend, if someone would like to offer a suggestion or a possible solution, that they come with that, so it's a problem with a possible solution at the same time.
That sounds very good. Thank you.
Anything else? I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff that we need to figure out, but we got it on the table to further discuss. That's what we're doing here. Okay, so then G, which was added, is the open enrollment discussion.
At this point, I would recommend that we direct, I know it's not an action item, but I would like to direct our district administrator to deny open enrollment out requests without face-to-face parent and student meeting for all applications during this time period.
I'll just back up, Mitzi, on that one. I mean, we can't legally tell people they can't go at all, but it will help us on a few fronts. It'll help us with having actual face-to-face conversation, hopefully in one of our buildings, because, sometimes people choose to open enroll without ever talking to anybody who's here or being in a building. And secondly, I think it will give us some feedback on why someone is choosing to open enroll. And we need to start getting that right away. So I think even if they end up leaving, we'll know what it was. And if it's a viable something, we get moving on those things too. If it's something that we're dropping the ball on and we can fix, Those are the people who need to tell us that. They're making the move to send their child somewhere else, so we need to know why.
And I'm happy to do that. I can say that in the last several years, building principals, to the extent possible, have attempted to make contact with those families. Just to give you a status report, as of today, the second day of the 3-month open enrollment period, there are 60 applicants out at the present time.
New applicants?
Not all new, some are duplicates. Individuals can make an open enrollment request up to 3 other school districts, so they're counted more than one time. Others are of the mindset that they have to reapply for open enrollment every year, and that's not the case. There are some districts that require multiple applications when there's transition, say from elementary to middle school or middle school to high school. So those would be maybe the same students that have been enrolled out but would have to reapply. Every year we take a very close look at each of these to find out exactly what the background and history is on the individual request.
So, I know you don't have the number probably in front of you. Is that 10 new? We're talking about 10 new students of those 60, or you?
I'd look at it.
Obviously not 60.
Correct. I'd look at it.
Students,
I'd look at it the other way. There's probably 20 that are currently seated in our buildings. And related to that, some of these students have never been in our district, ever, have set foot. And a number of them would be incoming 4K students. So, for example, they've been at a daycare facility, could be a private or faith-based daycare.
So how many currently that go to school here that you know of approximately?
Approximately 20 on that list, currently enrolled students.
But you said 4K, so that those students have never been here.
A 4K, no. So of the 20, there would be other grade levels beyond kindergarten, so that's first through 12th grade.
Anything else on that? Okay. All right, so then we'll move on to action item A. Consider changing regularly scheduled February, the next board meeting of February 11th to February 18th.
I would move that we change the monthly regularly scheduled second Tuesday meeting this month to February 18th, the following Tuesday.
I'll second that. And for anybody that doesn't know why we did that, is that we have been granted by the state to stay open, and meeting once a month isn't going to get the job done. So we are going to meet as often as it is required for us to become financially viable and be a destination for our students. That is why we are doing that.
And at this time, it is strictly just February, and at that time, we might be adding, obviously, we're going to be adding more meetings, but right now, the third Tuesday is just for this month. And we might go the first or second, however we see that each time we meet, we'll make announcements and changes as needed. So.
And this will give us 2 weeks for committees and the administrative staff to gather information so we can actually have action in 2 weeks on some things.
Correct. So, okay. All right. So this item's been properly motioned and seconded. All those in favor of changing the February meeting from the 11th to the 18th, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Action item B, consider appointment of vice president to the Palmyra-Eagle Area School District School Board. Does anyone have any Anybody that they would like to motion?
I would nominate Doris Parsons.
I would second.
Okay. Okay.
You can take
You-
multiple nominations if you so choose.
It's just,
If any of you really want it, I'll nominate you. If at this point it's open, it needs to be filled, I would be honored to fill that role.
okay. Thank you. So we have a motion to add Doris Parsons as the school board vice president.
I second.
Yep. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay.
Before you move to the next item, then, I will need signatures from the president, vice president, and treasurer, again, for processing with Skyward for payroll and vendor checks. I also invite each of the three of you to visit the bank in town, because they will also need to have your signature, and please have a valid state ID, typically a driver's license, which they'll take a photocopy of from you. At the bank, you can either see Joy or Julie. You do not all three need to go at the same time, but we need to do this again, even though we did it 10 days ago.
Okay. Action item C, consider appointment of school board members to existing board committees. Let's see. Just for you, anyone new or even you guys, so we typically have 3 on a committee with 1 chair. All committees can be attended by everyone, you know, if they so desire, but we would need to have 2 at each committee to have that quorum. So I guess at this time,
Corey,
you-
I've got them handy if you want me to go through them, or if you have a copy present, then, okay.
We have, I'm just wondering if placing the actual, do you want a motion that we fill all board committee vacancies, or do you actually, is it necessary to vote at a school board meeting action item on who the people are on each committee? I thought that was just, you, nor in the past, you'd give your what you're interested in, where you think your talents lie, to the president, and then the president would put the committees together. So I would, if that's fine, I would move that people who are not on committees would look at the committees and give you the information, or we can talk about it, and that you would put together the committees.
That's typically how we've done that in the past. The reason it was agended tonight was because of that sense of urgency to begin meeting. But if you can relay your interest to Mr. Jones, simply be mindful of the fact that you are missing one as yet to be named member of the board. Whether that plays into your thinking or not, I don't know. That's up to you.
I mean, at that point, you may revisit, you're 1 member short, and you have 2 current members pending.
The
So
committees
You're going
would
to
be,
change 3 people in
Yeah.
a matter of months.
the committees would be constituted basically till after the election anyway, and then the full board would reorganize in total.
For a matter of expediency, could we just get together with Corey following the convening of the, back into open session after the closed session, and just do, I'll go here, I'll go there?
Yeah, that's, you know, Corey, whatever you feel most comfortable with as president. Again, typically, as has been mentioned, the president would gather interest and then make those committee assignments.
that would be fine. Yeah, that way we're all on the same page as to who has the talents to go where and has the desire. So then at this time, I would table action item C.
That's fine.
Do we have a motion?
Or I could.
Yep.
We could vote on it.
For a motion to table. action
Motion to
I
table.
have a motion to table action item C.
Okay.
Second?
It's been properly motioned and seconded. All those in favor of tabling action item C, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Action item D, approval of resignation of Director of Special Ed, Pupil and Learning Services.
With regret, I move that we accept the resignation of our Director of Special Education, Pupil and Learning Services and wish her the best of luck.
Just wanted to add that this is a position that we have somebody in place at this time.
We
Or
reached
will
out,
be, I should say.
correct, to CISA too, for the individual that actually had covered for Mrs. Jones while she was out on her maternity leave, so that there's a continuation of services to students and our families. And that's through the end of the school year, with no commitment to beyond.
Okay, thank you. So, all those in favor of the approval of resignation for the Director of Special Ed, Pupil and Learning Services, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. So, at this point in time, I guess,
To go into closed, not a bad idea.
okay.
There's a specific reason we're going into closed, and that's after the to-wit, so it would help to read it into the record.
So at this point, I'd consider a motion to adjourn to closed session. At this point, the board will consider a motion to move to closed session, pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.851C, to wit, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, to wit, consideration of individual teacher and individual administrator contracts. We have a roll call vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Justin and Doris. Sorry. It's been properly motioned and seconded. Can now please have a roll call vote, please?
Justin Thomas? Yes. Corey Jones?
Yes.
Michael Eddy? Yes. Doris Parsons? Jean Reith? Yes. Mitzi Rashewski?
Yes.
So we will, 5 minutes? Is that enough? Is that okay? Okay.